All right, we're good. We're live. We're
Awesome.
recording. Awesome. Dude, thank you so much for coming in.
Sorry.
I really appreciate it.
I'm adjusting your equipment here. Is that okay, Joe?
No, perfect. You're the one that taught me how to use it, so I'd rather you fix it.
This is awesome. Now, that's not going to peak, is it? Because, see, I'm much more worried about what's going on out here than I am right now with what's happening.
No, it should be fine if it's not.
You know. Every time I get in front of the camera, I end up dropping the ball somewhere else, so.
Yeah, I find that I'm running into the same problems.
Yeah.
No, thank you very much for coming in. I really, really appreciate it. For those of you guys that are listening, Dave Craig is the co-owner of Sharp Focus Creative Academy, the film school that I went to learn all of this and more. To be able to produce this show is because of Dave and Scott, and I appreciate everything that you guys have done for me.
I got to tell you, man, right back at you. You have no idea how much we absolutely love and appreciate you. And
so special.
It's I sound like the guy from what is it, The Boys?
Yeah.
You seen that? No, you, nobody, you. No, but seriously, it's like, you came in there with a pretty good basic background knowledge of what was going on in front and behind the camera. But what's cool is when it's the most, how do I put this? I'm going to do this a lot today. I think it's all the fires and everything. It's like,
oh no, I totally get that.
But I'll tell you what, the fires work wonder for your radio voice. You know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that nice raspy kind of.
It's making me cough nonstop, and everyone's just staring at me like I'm going to get them sick and they're going to die.
Start hacking. No, it's the fires. Seriously, it's not COVID.
I want to touch on.
Real quick though, just on that last point, you can edit hopefully.
Yeah.
Although I know you hate editing, but.
I like editing. I don't like After Effects.
Good point. No, you know what it is it's the most rewarding and amazing thing to see someone really like take the program and just thrive on it and take it to the next level. And like this podcast and stuff that you're doing, I hate to say, but like how many people have come out to LA with this idea and this dream in mind, and they come out here and they end up in the wrong places,
right? And
they spend a fortune, which on film school and different things like that, and then they end up going right back to Idaho.
Exactly.
And not doing any of it. So it's like, what was that all about,
And that's what's so special about your guys' program is that it's incredibly priced for what you get the most bang for the buck with you guys' program because it's really well priced. The knowledge is so incredibly extensive compared to the other schools I looked at. And I went to UCLA and LA Film School and New York Film Academy. And you guys just blew them the fuck out of the water. There's no competition there.
Well, I mean, you're getting it from two guys that literally have lived it the last, combined 45 years of experience between the two of us, right?
Right.
So, I mean, it's been boots on the ground. And there's one thing about learning things from a textbook, but there's a totally different thing about learning things from people that have actually been there, tripped, fell, made mistakes.
Right.
All stuff that I think that's one of the big benefits that you get with Sharp Focus. I think the other thing that I love about the school, and like I wanted to create with Scott, something that we wished we had when we moved out to LA, because
right.
There's just, you get out here and you're enamored and you're so excited about everything that's popping off all around you and you can't wait to get involved, but you don't know where to start.
Exactly.
And sadly, there's a lot of unscrupulous characters out here that are kind of just looking for Joe right off the bus.
Right. And the word a lot doesn't even define it correctly. There are beyond so many people.
So it's confusing. It's overwhelming for a lot of people, and we really wanted to create a kind of like a safe environment for people to nurture their creative spirit and their to be able to find their dreams and achieve that. If we could do it for free, sure. Who's not benevolent, right. and unfortunately we do have to charge something for it, but I do think it's reasonably priced. And I think at the end of the day,
and it's very hands-on. It's a small class size. You guys are right there with us the entire time, holding our hands, answering the questions as soon as we have them. You guys, you've been phenomenal. Every time I've either called or emailed, you guys respond within a day.
Oh, shit, it's Joe again. Oh, no, but you know what? It's funny because it's also a safe place for people to come and wear different hats and try different things out. And that's kind of one of those things you get out here. A lot of people, they don't know what the heck they want to do.
Right.
I was myself included. When I first moved to LA, I was certain I was going to be an actor. That was what I was coming out here for. And I happened to work in production as well. I found that to be preferable, at least to me, than waiting tables as an actor. So,
no, for sure.
I started working in production to just kind of get an idea of the set. I was very curious about all the elements. But the cool thing is with Sharp Focus is you have an opportunity to kind of, especially with the Accelerated Film Program, that's the new online program that we're hoping to have out in the next few months. That program specifically is just to immerse people in all the aspects of production, from script to screen, from conception to fruition, producing, screenwriting, shooting, directing, 2D, 3D graphics, all the way down to delivery and distribution, minus the shrink wrapping.
Right.
They teach that down the street. But yeah, so it's kind of a really cool opportunity for people to wear all the hats and kind of get an idea of what they want to do before spending a fortune honing in on just one subject.
And that was really cool. Like we touched on everything. We did sound. You let us direct. You let us. We did the script writing. We literally did everything from start to finish in terms of either a narrative or even the commercial production we did with Crusher Off-Road, which was awesome.
Fun. I lost a Jeep out of that.
I'm so sorry about that. I
Poor
felt
soldier.
horrible.
We lost a soldier on that one, but you know what? He Ruby went out with a bang and a blast.
And
that's
fire.
for sure. And a fire. And if you don't believe us, Joe, cut to that fire right now. That's
absolutely. I'll cut to it right now.
Well, the rain's coming.
That was my Steve McQueen, James Dean jumping out of a fire-burning, exploding vehicle moment. Everybody should at least have one of those.
You're not a man unless you have one of those moments. Unless you jump from a burning car.
No kidding, man. That was something.
So clearly we both love film. What movie was it for you? And when was it that you watched it? What movie was it that really piqued your interest or sparked your interest in getting into filmmaking or just the love of movies?
I don't know definitively that it was a movie per se, but for me, I think I was always just enamored and fascinated with photographic equipment at a very young age.
Wow.
My dad had this from as long as I can remember. He would always film Christmases, and he had this like one of the very first video cameras with the Vidacon picture tube, and it would like ghost as you panned across lights, and I was just fascinated with this thing that I could stand in front of it and watch it on TV and. Wow, I'm on TV. This is really cool. So for me, I think it started just with cameras and lenses and being interested in film and photography.
That tangible equipment.
And and then definitely I think it's name any Spielberg movie. That's what got me into wanting to make movies. For me, it was E.T. Close Encounters, Back to the Future. We always go back to that one.
Love that
That's
movie.
One of my favorite movies of all time. I think all of us share that. And then just telling stories.
Would you say that there's a movie that you have an emotional connection with that you'd like, no matter what, you're having a bad time in your life and you put this movie on to kind of make yourself feel better, or something that maybe you love that you'd like to share with your daughter?
Well, I mean, you had me going in one direction, and now that just completely pulled the car over, buddy. So sharing with my daughter, that's a fun one. Because I'm trying to think of things that meant so much to me as a kid. Like I was.
Let's just stick with that then.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
But the other one I like too. So I mean, just stuff growing up as a kid. I was. It was Knight Rider. It was The Fall Guy. So those are TV shows. But as far as movies, I don't know why this keeps coming up to me. Did you ever see the movie Cocoon?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, a really fantastic, underrated movie. But that was like such a I don't know, just a cool. So you've got your alien elements there. You've got these three aging guys jump in the swimming pool where a meteor has landed, and suddenly it's like the fountain of youth.
Right.
Anyway, back to stuff to share with my kiddo. That's a tough one.
When she's of age.
Know. Yeah.
Not necessarily now at 4 that she is.
Yeah.
So not maybe now, but maybe when she's at 12, 13, something that was open her eyes up to something extraordinary or beautifully
I've
beautifully
got,
done.
I've got a list. But where my mind was originally going with that was, I'm a huge Stanley Kubrick fan, but I don't know that I would be, hey, honey, come here, let's watch Clockwork Orange.
Hey, you could show her The Shining now.
She's a 4.5, she won't remember. But, so I tend to go for a lot of the edgy stuff, like The Shining, absolutely one of my favorite movies of all time. And then, like, Stanley Kubrick, the thing about him is his movies are the gift that keep on giving.
Right.
So the first time you might watch 2001, you might not have grasped 90% of what happened in that movie, and you might even not like it. In fact, I remember the very first time I watched 2001, I'm like, what was all the hoopla about? Like,
the whole 15 minutes, I almost didn't watch the movie. I shut it off because no one talked for the first 10 to 15 minutes. It pissed me off. For
me, I'm sitting here, and I couldn't shake it, though, because 2 days go by, 3 days go by, 2 weeks go by. I'm still thinking about this movie. Like, it disrupted me enough. I didn't think I liked it. It disrupted me enough that, I knew something was going on there that I wasn't grasping. And I actually went back and watched it a second time. I hated it so much, I watched it twice.
Wow.
But that's a Kubrick film for you. And then going back and seeing this thing again, I'm like, okay. And then watching it again. And so it's the same thing with, like, The Shining, with Clockwork Orange. Kubrick movies are the gift that keep on giving.
Absolutely.
Every time you watch, you're going to notice something different.
Are you a big fan of, like, watching those films in a revival house or, like, The New Beverly?
Oh, that's funny. You know what? I actually I think it was Clockwork Orange that they brought back to the theater, and so I did go and see that one. But yeah, I know those guys do those occasionally, and yeah, once everything opens back up, that might actually be a fun field trip.
You used to own your own production company.
Yeah, well, still do, but it's kind of. I mean, we basically moved everything over to Sharp Focus, so Sharp Focus is now the production company as well as the film school. So there's Sharp Focus Creative Academy and Sharp Focus Creative as the production arm.
How did you get started in that?
So life story. I'm originally from Miami, Florida, and I lived in Orlando for a little while. And so I started working in production. Orlando at that time in the mid 90s was supposed to be Hollywood East.
Right, I remember.
They were pumping. Oh, well, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, group in South Florida. Yeah.
Florida Connection. So they were pumping, millions of dollars into sound stages, post-production facilities, Disney, Universal. I mean, you had everything to make that area right for the picking for film and TV. And I think some of it may have had to do with state incentives and tax.
Well, it's that, and then also the unreliable weather. It could rain at any given moment, and then the heat.
But you have that in Atlanta too, though.
Yes.
So it's like, well, so why did Atlanta pop? And God bless them, but they gave incredible incentives to film and TV there. But yeah, so it just kind of never took off in Florida. And, so I got my teeth, I got my, the word that I'm looking for here, I got my feet wet there and started working in production. I started working out as an office PA with one company, and then, set PA. And I got to work on a ton of different projects and work with a lot of different talent. And I kind of, at that point, realized I need to get out of here. I need to go to LA. LA is where it's happening.
Right.
That's the place to be. So 99, I moved out here. So I just had my, I think I just celebrated 21 years. Actually, next week will be 21 years because it was like September 20th or so that I moved out here in 99. And and then immediately, tried to get a job waiting tables, and there were no jobs to be had.
I don't think people realize how incredibly hard it is, because everyone and their mom who wants to be in the industry, that's their bread and butter job, is to work in a restaurant or a bar in some capacity.
Yeah.
And it's the barrier of entry is almost as hard getting a job bartending as it is becoming an actor.
Or just getting into the film industry in general. It's ridiculous, right? But so immediately upon coming to LA, boy, man, you just get, that slap in the face of realizing it's a huge culture shock.
Yeah.
So like typically, you're fresh off the boat in LA. Within 1 week out here, you've got at least 4 parking tickets, a boot on your car. You can't get a job. You're trying to get an apartment somewhere. It's like, it is absolutely a real.
That's another bitch. It's so incredibly hard just to find an apartment here too. It's like searching for the Holy Grail. It's fucking unreal.
Yeah, man. it could definitely be. It's tough. And then so now you're coming out here with all these hopes and dreams and excitement about moving to Hollywood, and all you get is kicked in the teeth. Like, at least, the best piece of advice I got, I finally did get a job at a restaurant. And the best piece of advice, one of the other servers was like, dude, if you can make it out here 1 year, you got it made. But you got to get through your first year. Don't leave. Don't, if you can do that, you'll be fine. And he was right. Got through that first year I went through, it was harrowing. It was a crazy experience. But then you start to meet people. You start to make friends.
Right.
And, you get good advice from people that have been here longer than you have. And another reason why we wanted to make Sharp Focus. I mean, that's one of the greatest things about Sharp Focus is that you guys built this wonderful community for everyone to really kind of network and feed off each other and help each other out. I want to talk about the airsoft battles. I know for a long time you were working with your production company and working with these military vets and kind of doing these airsoft battles and military practice runs. And talk to me about some of the locations that you guys were working in, because I know a lot of them were extremely weird, but also there was a special element that was involved in these locations. So if you could just tell me about those locations real quick. So if you think about it, what type of places are going to allow a bunch of 500 to 1,000 crazy people with airsoft guns running around shooting each other? Like what type of venues are going to sign off on that and let you do that? And typically the places that we would go would be pretty much every abandoned insane asylum in the country, former prisons, any type of sanitarium or any asylums, all these kind of places. That's where the close quarter indoor combat type stuff would, the only people crazy enough to rent to us.
And this is where one of our other shared interests come into play.
And this is where this comes into play. So, for the camera, so we can talk about this, and then also another sort of thing to piggyback on is at some point, maybe after ask me about the near-death experience.
Oh, for sure.
And we'll go.
I didn't know if you wanted to say that or not.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
That's fine. It's fine. It's good. It's a good thing to talk about, and it's still something that lives with me every day of my life. So it's a good thing to share.
Hell yeah, let's do it.
So basically, the only places that would let people, crazy people in there to have war games are these insane asylums and different places like this. So basically, I spent like 12 or 15 years traveling the country, getting an opportunity to film these incredible venues with a lot of history. And I had seen ghost hunter shows before. I'd seen, a couple of these things. I didn't really get into it at that time. I've always had a healthy regard for the supernatural. Absolutely know, that it exists. I had a near-death experience when I was very young. So that came with its own processes and things. So I have a healthy regard for the supernatural. I don't claim to know anything or everything about it. And I hadn't had a whole lot of experiences with that, even though we were in a lot of these places that like ghost hunters and places would shoot.
Right.
So, I'd show up with my crew. I'd grab my camera on the first day and I would just start shooting B-roll, because the form that these little mini documentaries took was a dual story. So it would tell the story of this abandoned venue, what it was before, and then it would tell the story about the event going on at the venue that weekend. That was how I could justify continuing to do these types of projects, because I really am a storyteller at heart.
Right.
And I think I have a documentarian and kind of a journalism bug. So whereas you get Scott, he's more the narrative, like filmmaker. He wants to make blockbuster movies.
I can see the difference between you guys, and you're very good at it too.
I'm a documentary filmmaker at heart. Like I love telling stories, and I love telling people stories and real things. I love going to movies, but I've never really seen myself as like I'm not a Steven Spielberg. I'm probably more of a Ken Burns or something, like that. But so in order to continue to do these and make them fun for me, I kind of had to have a story element involved. And flash forward to June 2016, we roll up to Pennhurst Asylum in Spring City. Westchester, I guess, PA, or Spring City, Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia.
Right.
This place was absolutely mind-blowing. And I had an experience there at that time that I have never had since and have never had before.
Let me ask you. So in any of the other places, it didn't even come to mind, and then something happened here?
It always came to mind because John and I, my client, my dear friend John Liu, and a very good friend and client, we always had kind of an interest in this.
Right.
So even a couple of the places that we went, we shot like a little spoof or whatever, and it was a joke. But nothing, I was disappointed actually, because we would go to the most supposedly haunted places, and after coming back from there, I did go on a Ghost Adventures binge, and I've watched every single episode since because I had had an experience.
Right.
So suddenly I'm like, I need to know what the hell just happened to me. So yeah, go ahead.
So nothing happened at these other locations, and then all of a sudden something random happened at this place. Did you guys go there with the intent to do any sort of ghost hunt whatsoever?
No.
It just happened first, and you were like, "Oh fuck, let's grab the cameras, and let's do this."
That's what happened.
Okay,
that's
cool.
exactly what happened. And one of the beautiful things about this is I'm inquisitive by nature. I think you get the best footage journalistically in a documentary by showing up knowing nothing and asking questions. You know, that's how you get the scoop.
Right.
I'm a huge fan of Hunter S. Thompson.
Ooh, okay.
And the way that he injected himself into the story, the whole gonzo journalism, was basically him inserting himself and becoming a central character in whatever it was he was covering. That's kind of my approach to a lot of these different things. So
Right.
So when we ended up at Pennhurst, I had heard, John got excited. He's like, "Oh, you're gonna love this place. It's supposed to be really haunted." And I'm like, "Yeah, you've said that about every place we've been, John." And quite frankly, we haven't, I never even so much as a tap on the shoulder or the hair on the back of your neck going up or anything like that. I mean, and I'm very much, I'm a believer in it, but I'm very much a pragmatist. Is that the word? Here we go, man. I'm just at a loss. I think it's the fires. I'm just breathing.
Everything's coming in.
But I think I'm very down to earth when it comes to this stuff. I don't get overly anxious or excited. I'm not an unbeliever, but I'm not kind of a,
You're not someone that's so into it that the littlest noise or the littlest possibility.
I really wasn't into it at all before this. I mean, like I said, I've always had a healthy respect for it.
Right.
I mean, if the jury's out and you don't know something, you're kind of not the smartest person if you're going to debunk everything and say it doesn't exist.
But you're also not going there and hearing something like, "Oh my God, that was definitely a ghost. It was definitely an alien," because the light changed. Like, you're very intelligent with how you look at it and kind of approach the situation.
Yeah. I'm into it. I love it. Like I said, The Shining, one of my favorite movies. Favorite radio show to listen to was Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
Absolutely love that.
And I would listen to those EVP guys would go through with the things, and you'd hear children being like, "It's dark in here," and oh my God, like, how do you? I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. Like, I dig all that kind of stuff. I think it's fun, but I didn't need it to happen. I wasn't looking for it, and sometimes that's But I can tell you that my life after June 15th of 2016 was never the same.
Tell me what happened. I want to hear.
So a bunch of different things occurred over this weekend that to this day I'm still trying to put it together because there were things that just were absolutely unexplained. And, all right, where do I start? Let me just think about this for just a second.
So what was the initial experience to make you guys say, "Oh, fuck, we need to grab the cameras and kind of, look into this a little bit more"? What was that, the epicenter of the event? What happened?
So we showed up on Friday at the venue, and we were really lucky because the owner, Timothy Smith, who owned the property at that time, he and his dad, and I think they had a business partner, and they had bought the property. They bought it to build condos, and just a whole bunch of things kind of got in the way of that for them. Of course, the housing market dipped in 08 right after they had bought this property. Everything went to hell in 08.
Very familiar with that, yeah.
So at that point, they said, "Well, we need to be making something here. This is crazy." And so they built this really involved haunted house that would open up seasonally. And we did get an opportunity. The owner happened to be there that day, so we had the opportunity to like walk through the haunted house. Couldn't take any video equipment or do anything through that. That was interesting. So the first kind of thing, so typically when I get on set or I get out to one of these venues, the very first thing I do on Friday when we get out there, it's usually registration for the players. So that's when I grab my camera and I just start just getting all this B-roll. And it's everything that I'm going to do a voiceover over. Pennhurst Asylum, blah, 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 you know, and I'm going to cut to all these different little shots. We have our drone footage and all this cool stuff. So typically I grab my camera, walk around, you know, no problem, come back, just get your footage, you know, go to dinner. I'm already thinking, you know, hey, Outback tonight, like where are we going? You know, a little whiskey, a little steak. We get into the room with one of the owners and he starts talking about the history of this place. And he brings in a group of the players that were there and just takes us into this room in the Mayflower building. And he happened to have a couple of the DR60 Panasonic recorders. And the technology in these recorders, this is from the early 90s. And there's a reason why when I keep hitting this thing,
it's okay.
Sorry. There's a reason why they use these particular models. They don't use tape. It was one of the very first digital recorders that were being used at that time, and the quality is like probably 800 hertz or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like it's a very low quality, a lot of white noise. Well, if you think about and what a lot of people say, like for instance, whenever you know supposed entities enter a room, you'll see EMF meters spike, right? So there's electromagnetic energies and forces that are being released. And the whole idea behind the EVP is that it's releasing that and it's imprinting that on a tape or a recording device somehow. Right. So there's definitely electrical impulses that are happening. It's if you've ever had that thing where the hair stands up in the back of your neck when you walk into a room and you know something's in there with you. Anyone, for me to say this to you, you're like, yeah, right. If you've had it happen, there's no denying it.
Right.
You can't
very
explain it away.
Specific feeling.
The thing that is there, that's EMF. That's electromagnetic frequencies that are occurring in that space. So that's how they believe that these things register on recording devices. And the thing is, your iPhone or that Zoom, that is designed to give you the cleanest, best audio. So it's filtering out a lot of the room noise and room tone and things in the room that, so you're actually going to get probably better results with a shitty recorder, you know, in many cases than you would with a Zoom. Right. People still, you know, have said that they've gotten.
My buddy uses his phone as like a voice box and he does some EMF stuff with it. I don't know how, you know, precise that is because it doesn't actually have that white noise aspect to kind of allow that energy to kind of pass through it the same way. So I'm not so much trusting that as opposed to the actual physical old school, you know, Radio Shack model that may actually have
these DR60s are crazy because I think they probably cost $30 when they were new back in the 90s. You can't find one for under $1,600 on eBay now. Wow. Because this is the go-to for ghost hunters.
Are those the ones
people were sending them back to Panasonic because they said it was recording voices that weren't in the room?
No shit.
Yeah. I mean, that's the truth.
Wow.
And there's no tape. So it's not like you can go back and sort of, you know how you used to be able to get double exposures with cameras or you know, on an analog tape. Sometimes if you re-recorded over this a few times, you get like residual background noise. So the backstory on these recorders is that you also you can't rewind them. So you have about a 7-second ability to like ask a question and then push this thing and it rolls back like 7 or 10 seconds or something and plays it back from that point.
Gotcha.
But there was no real way to like rewind. So so I don't see how any of this could have been faked. You know, especially when you're standing in a room, it is absolutely dead silent and you ask a question and when you play it back, there's a voice there that was not in that room.
Right.
You know, and it responds to the actual question. One of these that I'm going to send in to you, you can very clearly hear. Oh man, I'm getting ahead of myself. So we had the owner there. What's really awesome is the owner's friend, who happens to be a historian of Pennhurst, but also has a little bit of the shining, if you will. She's very connected in a spiritual level to that place. And she happened to be there, so she was just telling us all about the history of the property and the stories. And we ended up going with them, and I'll get into that in just a sec because I want to get into some of the EVP that we had, and I'll send it in to you. Do we have time?
Yeah. You own the footage, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay, cool.
Oh yeah. So I'm going to send you some stuff that we can cut to if you want.
Awesome.
So one of the interesting things, so I'm asking them, and they're telling me about the history of this property, and I think it started in like 1906 or 1908, and this was basically a place that would house mentally ill or challenged children. And that's one of the things that makes this such a compelling and a really heartbreaking story, is because most of the people that were here were kids. And the parents were told, drop your kid off at Pennhurst. Don't let them be ashamed to the family. Drop them at Pennhurst. And by the way, please don't ever come to visit them because it only disrupts their process and their progress.
Wow.
So flash forward from 1906 when this place opened, a couple of years later, it was already at capacity. They were already busting at the seams. There was a huge, problem just with housing and clothing and feeding all of these people that were just being dumped there.
Yeah.
And in the 60s, a reporter, I'm disappointed with myself right now because I haven't thought about this stuff in a long time, and I should have done.
No worries.
But a young reporter at that time broke a story, basically exposing the whole thing, and the stuff that was going down there. I don't want to waste our time going into it, but if you have an opportunity, take a look at the video called "Suffer the Children." Suffer the Little Children. It's on YouTube. You can find it pretty much anywhere. And that's the story that this guy broke in 1968.
I'll link to that on the bottom of the description of this video so you guys can watch that.
So when we arrived that Friday, we got really lucky. The property owner was there, and he kind of gave us a little bit of a tour of the facility. And we got to see some of the behind the scenes and some stuff they were doing with the haunted house, which was really cool. But keep in mind, I had been to just about every abandoned asylum, prison, sanitarium, whatever you want to call it, in the country, shooting these events that would travel, throughout the country. And I would grab my camera and shoot B-roll and really not think anything of it. So he, at this point, the property owner and his friend Mara, who is a Pennhurst historian and also someone very, I guess, in touch with the paranormal.
Right.
She kind of has the shining, if you will. And so we really got an expansive tour, and it was just me and a couple of my camera crew and John Liu, the event producer. And so at one point he did bring in some of the players, and he kind of did this little EVP thing. We were talking about the radios that they were using. There's no way that they can, pre-record anything. These are 1990s technology, very poor quality. But you can actually hear, and I'll send in some tape for you guys to play if you'd like. Yeah,
I'll cut to the actual footage of it since you own it.
So he did like a little bit of a thing, for some of the players that were there, and did some EVP stuff, and it was interesting. I wasn't sold yet, but it was after that, he kind of explained a little bit more about the property, and basically this place, I think it opened in 1908. And primarily what it was I think it was called the Pennhurst Home for, we'll cut to something here.
Yeah.
I'll
toss it up.
But it was basically a place for mentally ill and disabled children. And primarily those were the patients at Pennhurst at that time were children. And in 1908, when it opened, immediately they started to see just a really, it was heavily taxed on the infrastructure. The place was already just overcrowded. Right. And throughout it, in fact, I don't think it closed until the 80s. Even after Bill Baldini's report came out in 1968, that exposed the horrific things that were going on in this place to these children.
What were some of the things that were going on there?
It's just heartbreaking. I strongly recommend you guys, if you get an opportunity, watch the documentary on YouTube called "Suffer the Little Children."
Right.
But some of the things that would go on there. So place was curated by a gentleman by the name of Dr. Jesse Fear.
Wow. Can't make that up.
Okay, you can't write that. All right. So Dr. Fear is on national television in 1968 telling the story of how they had this one patient that would act up. And so he goes to the physician at the place and said, "What's the most painful injection that we can give him that won't kill him?" And then he's smirking as he talks about how the kid hit the ceiling that night because it was, because of the type of punishment they were dishing out there. I mean, it's just it's hard to talk about, to be honest with you.
So incredibly horrible. And I'm sure at this time, during the 60s, we're talking physical, mental, possible sexual abuse.
They were asked at one point when they were doing dental work, they said, "Why don't you give these kids Novocaine and anesthesia?" And their response back then was, "Morons don't feel pain."
What?
That was the way they approached it. So,
wow.
And the thing too, another interesting story is that if you bit once, you were punished. If you bit twice, if you bit someone, all of your teeth were extracted, pulled out of your head, and with no anesthesia.
Now, are these kids that their families eventually they came back to their families, or was this like a drop off and I never see you again situation?
Basically, the whole idea of Pennhurst back then, I guess people looked at mentally challenged people differently than they do now. And they were a burden to the family. And so the whole idea of Pennhurst was, don't let your mentally ill child be a burden to your family. Drop them off at Pennhurst. And by the way, when you drop them off, please don't come back and visit because it only disrupts their progress. So in many cases, you'll see in the Balladini film, in many cases, they're interviewing kids that have been there for 20 years. And they ask them, who loves you most in the world? And the answer is nobody.
Oh, that's so terrible.
Or it's when you think about who was actually suffering in this place, and the fact that they were children and they had done nothing wrong, it's absolutely unconscionable and just heartbreaking, the stuff that went down there.
That's gut-wrenching.
Not to mention, the entire facility had a whole network of underground tunnels. And there's a whole lot of speculation as to what went on in those tunnels. Oh. If you guys do get an opportunity, another really good piece that Zach Bagans and the Ghost Adventurers crew put together, they actually gave the history of the place, a lot of love there. And so it was actually a really well done piece. I was very impressed with what they put together.
I'll try to do a case for maybe that'll be the next case file idea will be on Pennhurst.
Yeah, they did a phenomenal job with that piece and just kind of explaining some of the stuff that went down there. But I highly recommend that you guys watch the Suffer the Little Children on YouTube because that will give you kind of an inside. That was the expose that took place in the 1960s, and it's just wow.
Wow. So you're someone that's now you've been to these places, never had an experience, don't. You kind of believe in it, but aren't one to jump to a conclusion to immediately think something paranormal is going on. Now you're here at this place. You're being told the story in the background. Then what happens? When does the experience happen?
Okay, all right. So the initial meeting was with some of the players, and they were kind of explaining the history of the place and doing some EVP stuff. Nothing that really rocked my world. I was more interested in kind of shooting the reactions and kind of just documenting what was going on. Once that stopped, the owner was there for a little bit, and he was kind of talking to some people and selling some merch they had. And so I did what I always do at all these places. I grabbed my trusty DVX 200 and threw it on my shoulder and just started walking through the building, grabbing really cool shots of gurneys and beds and the creepy windows. I mean, the place is just in a state, I'll tell you. It's been abandoned for many years. There's only, I think, 2 buildings that actually have power that you can actually go through, and everything else is just, nature is kind of reclaimed.
Wow.
But it is one of the most eerie places you can go. So I start grabbing my camera and I start just going in and just touring the place on my own, just getting B-roll. The very first thing that I remember happening was walking into kind of, I guess it was the day room. This would have been where patients kind of sit and look out the window and kind of, during the day. Right. And I was walking through this room and I approached a door. And when I went to push the door wouldn't open.
Right.
And what was odd about that was people went out that door earlier. So I'm like, okay, maybe they've locked it. And I gave it one more good push, and then suddenly the door pushed back.
What?
So yeah, so at that point the door opened up, and I almost felt as though like a hot, kind of like a warm wind, like a draft came through. But it's I don't know how to explain it. It's not like a warm, like air coming through your sliding screen door or something like that. This felt like something passed through me. And immediately the hair on the back of my neck went up, and I realized that I was in a place that belongs to someone or someone else. You know what I mean?
Were you by yourself when this happened?
I was.
Okay.
That was the last time I was by myself that entire weekend. Because this was the first thing that kind of like told me something unnatural is happening here that I can't fully put my mind around, but something's going on here that is bigger than me.
And you're saying it was hot, right?
Well, it was cool. It was actually, it wasn't that, even though we were there in June, it wasn't really hot out. But this was like just the only way that I can describe the feeling of whatever this was it would feel similar to a warm wind. That's not what it was. What it was I feel like an entity or something just went through me is what it felt like. Anyway, I grabbed my camera and I was like, respect, bro. I think I even said that. I'm like, respect. I'm on your property. I'm in your place. I'm just going to turn my happy ass around and go. And I was gone. I was out that door. So from there, I'm now, at this point, I'm sweating. I'm shaking.
I would have shit myself.
I'm trying to keep my composure. But I briskly walked. I didn't run, but I briskly moved out of that place.
You ran.
And I went to where I heard voices, where I knew that the owner and the people were still in there. And so I began to just start listening to some of their stories, but I'm still swallowing, like trying to, a cotton mouth, like something very bizarre had happened, Interesting postscript. As I was walking out of that area, I looked back over to where I had just been, and the door was wide open. And nobody had been through there. Like, it was just literally me and the camera crew at this point, and the owner, and John Liu, who was our event creator. And so at this point, we talked to the owners and said, hey, would you mind giving us a little bit of a tour of the facility? And, is there anything interesting? And I was trying to push to see if maybe we could do a little ghost hunt and get some EVP. Why not? Right. And they were very down, like to do this. They were excited. They wanted to do it.
And before you guys went on this little hunt, you didn't really watch Ghost Hunters or Ghost Adventures. You weren't really into that. I knew those TV shows. You knew they existed, but you weren't like someone who would watch them religiously.
I was not at all. No.
Okay.
I mean, John Liu and I, like I said, he's my client and a very, very dear friend. We would always joke about it because we were always at these types of places. And I think he might have watched some of that stuff back then, but I hadn't at this point. So we had gone to some other asylums, and we even did a couple little like Ghost Hunter spoofs or something, And we took some of the players. I was like flicking pennies around the room so it would hit a wall and people would get all freaked out. It was me orchestrating the whole thing, just being So no, I had never seen an episode. I'd never even heard of Ghost Adventures prior to that. I had seen the Taps one,
right,
and Dead Files and a couple of these things. I'm like, tongue in cheek. It didn't really affect me, or I didn't really think about it. Not that I didn't believe in these things, but I just, at that time, it wasn't something that I had personally experienced. And so 9 times out of 10, I'm always the one trying to be pragmatic about these things and say, what else could it have been? But there are some things you can't rig someone's gut.
Right.
That's a terrible way of saying that, but like you can't set up the hair on the back of my neck tingling and feeling a hot breath behind me and knowing something is behind me.
Right.
And it might as well have been you or one of my crew, because I turn around and there's nothing there. But I thought it was Jordan messing with me when I got my drone pilot. Right. And and I turn around and there's nobody there. I'm like, you can't manufacture that.
Right. There's a physical aspect that's happened to your body that you can't really fake.
And I've been to every place in the country, and I've never felt anything like that before. So I'm like, something's different. Something's going on here that I can't explain. Which is what paranormal is. It's not normal. It's paranormal. It's something I couldn't explain.
Right.
It doesn't mean there's, you know, ghosts and goblins and all these different things. I mean, you know, I honestly don't know what's out there. You know, I'm a student of life. So until you run into it face to face, you know, how do you know?
Right.
So the next very interesting thing that happened, this is kind of our first little brush with equipment failures, is I had a brand new battery that was on my camera, the DVX.
So at this time, now you're going out with the intent of trying to look for stuff.
So I had my first little bit where this door wouldn't open, and then it pushed me. It opened with force towards me, which, and even in my head, I'm thinking, that could have been a spring. It might just open one way. Later, I saw the same door, and it was fully wide open, and there was nothing behind there, so that was very strange. But that wind, that hot wind kind of thing came out, and I felt like something walked through me, and I just, hair in the back of my neck went up, and I'm just like, okay, I'm in your space. I'm going to move myself quickly from this area. And I made my way back to where the property owner and Tim Smith and Mara were there, and our camera guy and John Liu. And I heard them in there talking, so I just quickly made my way back there. I think even at that point, John or Jordan looked at me and they're like, "Is everything okay?" I'm like, "Yeah." Yep. So the next thing we were going to do was go on a little ghost hunt. I was like, "Do you guys have anything here you want to show us? Anything?" You know, I wasn't expecting much, but I'm like, "Hey, you know, grab the recorders. Maybe we can, you know, like wow me, basically, show me, you know, what's this all about?" And through that experience, you know, they were also talking about the history of the place, and so we learned a little bit more with all that. We're getting ready to go up to the third floor of the Mayflower building, and suddenly I've got a red light going off on my camera that a fully charged battery is dead. Okay, I've heard of this happening before.
It's happened to me before, yeah.
Yeah, and then of course Jordan, his camera, same thing. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me! This is ridiculous. We charged him. We flew in the night before. Everything was all on chargers the whole day, so and the whole night.
The theory behind it is that
bizarre.
these entities are essentially pulling the energy out of these batteries and electronic devices in order to allow themselves, almost like they power themselves up with it, in order for them to either manifest visually or provide some sort of auditory,
some kind of manifestation
noise.
or whatever. And it takes energy and power to do that. And if you take a look at, like, you know, that's why these things are popping on EMF meters, right? Because there's electromagnetic energy that's being put out there. So yeah, it absolutely makes perfect sense. So this is interesting. So we go back out to the car, the rental car. Wow, I'm getting ahead of myself. So at that point, we're getting ready to take the little ghost tour with Mara and Tim and everybody. I realize the batteries are done. So I run back out to the car, and at this time also, I wanted to put my wallet? I wanted to put my wallet and just lock it in the glove box because I had loose, you know, shorts. I didn't want to lose anything.
Right.
And so I go to put the wallet and I have my phone. I go to put the wallet in the glove box. The glove box is locked, so I take the keys, unlock the glove box, put the wallet in there, and start to exit the vehicle. And then I go to lock the door of the vehicle, but I can't find the keys to the car. One of the things I started to notice about this around this time, ever since that first thing had happened, that thing came out and I felt like it pushed through me, I started to get very, just very confused. Like almost like, I don't know if you ever have like anxiety attacks or anything like that.
Yes,
just where
I do.
There's just all the synapses are firing, and I'm kind of like.
That's one of the reasons I started smoking so much weed, because of severe panic attacks. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not laughing at your plight, but no, I get it. It's so at this point, I'm not thinking straight, and I'm like, I'm nervous, and I have this nervous energy, and I'm just not. My brain isn't functioning, you know, and I'm beginning to get like kind of irritable, and. Now I'm like, I just have these keys in my hand. They're waiting for me inside. I've got to go. I got to get the batteries. What else do I need to get? Oh, cards, you know, and all this stuff. Now I can't find the keys. So I have my wallet in here. Now I can't lock the car with all the camera gear. And, you know, even though we're at Pennhurst Asylum, we are still in the middle of, like, you know, it's outside of Philly. Like, I don't want to leave an unlocked car. So long story short, I'm still looking for these keys. I can't find them. I'm looking underneath the seat. I'm looking to the side. I'm looking everywhere. These things. I open the glove box. The wallet's in there. No keys. Where I had them in my hand because I needed to unlock the glove box. Where are these keys? So I'm beginning to get really ticked and frustrated. People are waiting on us, the whole thing. And now I've looked under all the seats, in between the cushions, under the car, everywhere. Something, in the back of my mind said, check the back seat. Like there's going to be keys in the back seat. I go and I'm fussing with some of the stuff that was back there, and I move a jacket that's there, and sure enough, the keys are in the back seat, passenger's side back seat. No recollection of how that could have possibly happened.
Let me ask you this. Looking back in retrospect, do you think that maybe something attached to you and started fucking with you?
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised. Because what did happen, like I said, prior to this, was me trying to go through a door that something obviously did not want me to go through.
Right.
And thought, how dare you have the audacity. Like the feeling I got over me was, how dare you have the audacity to just think you can roam around here and take pictures alone.
Did you wind up going back through that door into that room? Or were you just like, fuck it, I'm done?
I never went in that. No.
Gotcha.
Nope. It didn't have to be any clearer.
Right.
The thing, whatever it was, made it very clear to me that that was his domain, and he didn't want me going through it. There is a piggyback to that story, though, that I'll as soon as we get up to the third floor, I'll explain to you what happened there. Right. Because later on at the restaurant, Mara explained to me that that's a stairwell, I guess a corridor, and there's an entity or something that goes up and down there. So that might have been what
okay.
I experienced. Oddly enough, found the keys. I'm like, now I'm just ticked because the thing that I hear a lot in the paranormal community, like these things like to just play tricks and mess with you.
Yeah.
It likes to create anxiety and dissension, make you feel like you're losing your mind. Like I have these feelings of panic and anxiety when there was absolutely no reason why I should be feeling that way. Mm-hmm. This was no different than anything else we had ever done. We do these shoots all the time, 6 times, 7 times a year sometimes, in all these kinds of places. So I'm not used to feeling, number one, out of control. Number two, experiencing time differently. Like I have no recollection of what happened after I closed the glove box to when I was closing the car door and got out. Like I don't remember getting out of the chair.
Wow.
But it's a really, you start to question your sanity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so then I find these keys. At that point, a guy comes up. So Jordan's out there now with me, and he's formatting a card, doing something. And a kid comes up and he goes, "Hey," he goes, "Did one of you guys drop this? It's an SD card." And Jordan was like, "Oh my God, I'm so glad you found that." Jordan was telling me apparently one of the players had handed it to him and said, "Can you test this in your camera, because it won't read in my he had a GoPro that he wanted to wear." And so Jordan's like, "Yeah, I'll test it and I'll give it back to you at the hotel." They were staying at the same hotel we were. Long story short, Jordan, he was like, "Dad, I was going to tell you." He goes, I went to look for this card. I stuck it in my jacket pocket. I couldn't find it. I'm like, "Oh man, I lost this guy's SD card. I feel so bad. What am I going to do?" And so this guy, he goes, "Yeah." So long story short, he goes, Jordan says, "Yeah, I've been looking all over for that card. Where'd you find it?" He goes, "Oh, it was over on the other side of the Quaker building, across the lawn." Jordan had been with me the entire time shooting B-roll at the Mayflower. The Quaker building is a whole other building over, and not anywhere that we had even gone yet. We parked the car, we went to this building. That's where we had spent the majority of the day so far. So the kid hands this card to Jordan, and then the card comes, it gets misplaced, and then somebody finds it in an area that nobody from our crew had even been yet. That's just one of the more crazy,
wild.
It's just odd stuff, but it's stuff like poking you and playing tricks on you and trying to get you to question. And there was just too many things in a short period of time. Now, if you can tell me how these guys are orchestrating this or pulling this con off, if that's in fact what it was, because my mind always goes there.
Absolutely.
I'm like, how are they doing?
We're East Coast guys. We're
with it.
We're
hip. So at that point we go back in, and they're like, "Well, let's just take him straight up to the 3rd floor." And we're like, "Okay, what's on the 3rd floor?" "Well, there's an entity on the 3rd floor. We don't believe it resided here when the place was open. We believe it was probably brought in during the time of, kids would break into these buildings and do rituals and
this became a place where local teenagers would come,
you'd break in,
get boozed up, get high, do
exactly.
seances and shit. Okay.
Exactly. So and just doing dumb things that they don't know what they're getting themselves into. So they feel that entity that's on the 3rd floor was actually brought there.
Wow.
It didn't work there, and it wasn't a patient there. And Mara gave us a good warning as we were, before we went up the stairs. She goes, I just want to let you know, and I'm not telling you this to freak you out or scare you, but the third floor, there's something up there that tends to go after the alpha male in the group. It usually goes after the biggest dude, and within seconds, you'll just pass out. Like, it chokes you out. I'm like, huh.
And
okay.
this has happened with the guys from Ghost Adventure. Right?
It was one of them. It was
one of
either
their shows.
it was one of the shows, and they said that, and I don't want to mess it up, so I'm not going to say it's Ghost Adventure right now. It might have been another show, but it was some show, and it was a big guy that's on the show, and within seconds of coming up there, he was just on the floor, and they were carrying him down the stairs.
Wow!
And you took him at a big dude, and from what Mara said, like big.
So for those of you guys that are listening and watching, I'm going to provide you guys with some of the video of this experience. I obviously can't and not allowed to use the footage from whatever show. Even if I looked it up and found out which show where this guy was choked out at, I can't use that footage.
Yeah.
So I do want to let you guys know that I will provide you with something that Dave has.
Yeah, and I mean, we can use any of the footage that I have, and Mara and Tim telling these stories. We can use that stuff as well. I'm sure they'd be fine with that. And it's all out there, public knowledge. Right. Anyway, if you go to Lion Quest Films, you can watch the actual event that we shot. The Pennhurst Asylum. I think it was called Operation X 2016. But I do kind of a hybrid, like, documentary on the place, and we cover the event that was there that weekend.
So you guys go up now. Did she tell you just about the third floor? Or you went up to the third floor. So
she's kind of telling us or warning us just on the way up. She's like, if you feel faint, just know it's not uncommon. It happens, and and this has happened before. And these guys from, I don't remember what show it was, but they won't even go up there anymore.
Wow.
Apparently, and it freaked them out. So we get up there. Tim begins telling us how this was the very first place that he said he never even believed in ghosts before they bought that building, and he ended up there, and suddenly something down a hallway had come, and so as he's telling us this thing, again, I feel that hot, like, warm wind or draft.
It's okay.
Shit.
I gotta get like, I'm sorry, a Shure mic or something like that already has it built in.
You better get a tank. If you have me over here again, I'm going to bust this place up. All right, so so Tim was telling us a story about how his first paranormal experience was down that hallway. You just did what I did myself. And how he didn't even believe in ghosts before then. And so as he's telling this story, I start to feel this. I feel I can only explain it.
Is it similar to, like, when you have the oven on and then you open the oven door, that, like, hot air passing over you?
But it's not just something you feel on the outside of your skin.
You feel it going
my
through
guts
the inside.
got hot.
Wow.
Like the inside of my body. But it also,
I've never heard it explained like that. That's a creepy explanation. My guts got hot.
The closest thing that I might in my mortal mind be able to is like how radiation passes through you, for instance, or microwave or like whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are certain wavelengths and frequencies, obviously, that pass through human skin. And this it felt like this hot wind. And what's funny is most people talk about there being chills or cold drafts. This thing was hot as hell. And I just came to this realization right now. There was one EVP that I couldn't figure out what it said. And my best idea of what this thing said was, he says, what do you think about the guy on the third floor? Do you talk to him much?
It says it's hot up there or something like that.
Hotter than hell there.
Yes.
I didn't even put that together until just now. This was like years ago. So I just got chills again. This place. All right. So we're up there, and suddenly I feel like this thing just passed through me, and I'm like, whoa. And you hear me on camera. I'm behind the camera, but you hear me just go, whoa. I couldn't help but just, whoo, like that, And Mara goes, yeah. Did you just feel that? And I'm like, what the hell was that? At this point now, Tim goes and he goes, hey, we have the recorders. And he goes, is there anyone here? There's some people here that would like to talk to you, or something along these lines. It's been a while since I've seen these, but we'll provide them to you. And the thing says, you know what? I don't even want to say it because I want the people at home to be able to hear it.
Okay.
And decide for themselves. But at that point in time, this thing answered back very, very distinct
Yeah, you can hear it. I've already listened to it.
You can hear the consonants,
hear it
right?
quite well.
So this thing, so he says, there's a lot of people who want to talk to you. And keep in mind, so now he's holding, so Mara has 2 recorders, Tim's got 2 as well. Because sometimes you'll get different voice prints on different recorders.
Right.
But sometimes you'll actually get the same thing or portions of the same thing on 2 of them. So that right there tells you, something's going on. Because when you're in a dead silent room and you play something back and hear something that there was absolutely no possibility in, like, it was not there when you're standing right there.
Right.
I don't know how that can be faked, especially not with recorders that don't have tape, that you can't pre-record anything. These were the original, like, Panasonic 90s technology that had, there was a chip basically inside. Not one that you could even remove like an SD card now. So this was the very, very first digital recorder technology.
Wow.
And to hear something played back that was not there when you're standing there in dead silence is pretty insane.
It's a mind fuck.
And to hear the same thing on 2 recorders, or at least a portion or partial bits,
well, yeah, the fact that you don't hear the exact same thing on each one is weird. The fact that one recorder has a portion of it and the other one either has a separate portion, or that shouldn't be anything that exists. Like that recorder should pick up everything equally, because they're not in crazy different spaces. It's not like one's on the other side of the room and the second one's on the complete opposite side. They're in a relatively close space to one another.
So at this point now, this hot wind has passed by. He plays back the EVP and it says, "Get fucked." I don't know how much more clear it could possibly be.
It's clear.
And you've now heard this by now. And it was funny because everybody's trying to figure out like what it says. I'm like, did you hear? Do you know what it says? Because I do. I could hear it as plain as day. It said, "Get fucked." And I'm like, wow, that's just crazy. How that it wasn't there. Nobody said that at the time. There's nothing. It was dead silent. So now we're moving through. She's telling us about the guys from the how this thing likes to choke out the alpha males in the room. And I'm thinking, so another way to explain kind of that hot wind feeling. I felt like, Joe, if you would have been standing in front of me with less than an inch between our noses, that's what it felt like. I felt like something was in front of me, staring me down.
Wow.
And then as soon as it figured out that I wasn't a threat, it passed right through me. And that was the whoa. Like, I do that on the tape. You hear it, and Mara's like, "Yeah, did you feel that?" And see, the other interesting thing about Mara is she sees what's there.
Okay.
She can see it, and they hate her. Oh boy. So from there we go downstairs to this auditory. I think it was like a like where they would do hearing tests and different things like this. It was a soundproof room.
Right.
Those are always creepy, of course.
Oh yeah.
And we had about 5 or 6 of us in this room, and Mara was like, "Yeah." So the entity that lives down here was someone that worked at the place. He's a real prick. He got off on just mentally torturing these poor children that were there, and he hates me. And so at this point, she says something along the lines of, "If you want me to get out, say get out." And of course, there's silence, and then they play back the tape, and
I'll play that now.
And then he does, because he's kind of this king of his domain, and he's nasty. Best we can figure is that he abused people, and just kind of.
Or was he a?
No, he was a worker, probably a guy that worked, in the boiler room or the heating room or down there. This is a soundproof room, so they would have seen like two-way mirrors here and stuff like that. They would have been able to watch kids in here, and most likely things were not pleasant in here, or at least they were here to cry or do whatever. Now the king seems to be an entity that kind of runs the place down here, and Mara's not well liked by the king.
Basically, he's a very big, very, very big guy. Was not well liked, but trying to be like the big guy. This is why he doesn't like me, because I call him out on who he is. But in life, he was the guy trying to be like the tough guy or the cool guy or whatever. So him abusing and being cruel to mentally disabled women and children and men gave him power. And he's almost like a sociopath. He shoves and he pulls hair, and he tries to be very threatening to people when you come down here. He's right in the doorway back here.
King, are you here?
Does everybody hear that? That's pretty clear. He goes, yeah. If you're going to try to be threatening, you may as well be man enough to walk into the room and stand here with all of us.
If you're going to try to be threatening, you may as well be man enough to walk into the room and stand here with all of us. And if you want me to get out,
I don't know. He doesn't like you.
if you're going to try to be threatening, you may as well be man enough to walk into the room and stand here with all of us.
And if you want me to get out, say get out.
And if you want me to get out, say get out.
Get the out.
Threatening, you may as well be man enough to walk into the room and stand here with all of us. And if you want me to get out, say get out.
Get the out.
And if you want me to get out, say get out. And maybe I'll leave.
Good times, right?
See, because I see everything. He and I have this whole conversation going on. So it's very hard, even though I try to be very polite in a group like this. I mean, I see I see what he did and who he is. And if you all were walking in with some scumbag like him that was abusing children, you would be the same way. Hate him, I thought he said.
Did he say hate him?
Yeah.
I thought he liked him. What about your boy up on the third floor? You're afraid of him, aren't you? Why are you afraid of him?
What about your boy up on the third floor? You're afraid of him, aren't you? Why are you afraid of him?
I pissed him off.
You did.
What did you say?
He
I don't know.
screamed something.
He screamed something.
What about your boy up on the third floor? You're afraid of him, aren't you? Why are you afraid of him? I think that one.
Whoa, that was a sentence.
What the hell is he saying?
Okay, I'm backing up. That was like 4 words.
You're afraid of him, aren't you? Why are you afraid of him?
It's fucking wild because you hear it distinctly.
I mean,
it's very clear.
I can't stress this enough. 1990s digital technology. There's no way there's no card that comes out of this thing. It records directly onto the chip in the device. And I don't see, being in the industry, okay, but you know, audio visual stuff, and I'm a pretty technically minded guy. I can't see how that could be faked if in fact they were, and on multiple recorders. But this thing clearly says, if you want us to get out, say get out, get the fuck out, emphatically. Can't explain it. So over the course of the weekend, a bunch of other, you know, little things here and there went. But every time we tried to find it or chase it or set or I mean, we pretty much had the place to ourselves. So, you know, we could get the Quaker building apparently is also very haunted. I couldn't get anything there. I mean, pretty much, I think once the event started,
It's a lot of people there.
there's a lot of people there. We had like 500 or 600 people at the event, and they're running around in full military gear, shooting each other, and just having fun. At that point, I think, you know, anything that's there, that energy just gets disrupted.
Did any of the players say they experienced anything, or I'm sure, knowing you, I'm sure you asked and
there were,
talked
I
to these
think there
people.
were, I think there might have been a couple of people that saw some stuff or different things as they were, you know, playing the game. But you'd have to check I think the outtake reel on that clip on Line Claws. We interview some of the players and stuff like that. But I'll tell you, it threw me for a loop. It's something I've never experienced in my life, and it's just all around you. It's not like you show up and a couple things happened. You wear it
right
when you're on that property. It's all around you, and if you really listen and you really look hard enough, you know, I totally believe. What do they call the theory? We can edit this out, but it's the Bagans talks about it. It's the theory that these entities and that spiritual entities will attach themselves to organic objects like the wood and the concrete and things like that.
Yeah.
I don't stone.
I'm not.
Stone tape theory, I think it's called.
It's
look it up. Fuck it.
Yeah.
I got a phone. That's a handheld computer.
Yeah, Google stone tape theory. I think that's what they call it.
Stone tape theory.
Might be completely out of my mind. Oh.
Stone tape theory is the speculation that ghosts and hauntings are analogous to tape recordings, and that mental impressions during emotional or traumatic events can be projected in the form of energy, recorded onto rocks and other items, and replayed under certain conditions.
And that's exactly it. I 100% believe in that. You could feel it all around you. And I even asked Mara at one point. I said, "What do you see right now?" Because sometimes you would just catch her gaze, and she would just be watching something. Like, "What are you seeing right now?" And she's like, "I'm just seeing a whole line of residents."
And,
you know, and
when you were dealing with this woman, did you get any sort of indication that she's full of shit?
not even a little bit. Do you know what's funny? I got to basically spend 24 hours with her up there, and we became Facebook friends afterwards, and all of us did, and we've communicated here and there. She's seen like some of the footage that we got. She's one of the most beautiful people inside and out that I think I've ever met. She just has the most beautiful sense of just love and compassion, and she's definitely not somebody that would be interested or even get anything out of putting people on. She has a real passion for, I think, the children that were left there, and I think she just feels that a lot.
Okay.
And I think she's just very sensitive to it.
So now that you had that experience there, have you looked into going anyplace else and kind of doing a ghost hunt?
When I got back, I found the need to really substantiate and challenge what I had experienced, because it was really messing with my head.
Right.
This was a pretty, I never really experienced anything like this in my life. I've heard from other people that it exists, and, but until something really happens to you, you just downplay it, or you don't really think, I'm always thinking of, too many things happened that weekend that I could not find a plausible explanation for.
I remember watching the video, and there's a portion where you're either on the car phone or on speakerphone with your wife, and you can hear how serious and like freaked out you were when you were telling her about it. Yeah,
I was absolutely freaked out. And here's the worst part of it. It lent a stronger dose of reality in my mind to what had happened to those poor children.
Yeah.
No fault of their own, and already having a diminished ability to comprehend and understand the world around them.
Right.
But, to not have the love of your parents, to just be dropped off at a facility where nobody loves you and takes care of you, where horrible things, patient abuse that would happen there.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
There have been many deaths there. People jumping out of windows, or thrown, hung, beaten to death. These are kids, man. When you watch that video, the stuff of the little children, you will see the faces of these. Well, some of them are blocked out because they're underage, but
right.
you'll see the type of individual that were there, and everything was left as is. The minute the place was shut down, people walked away. So when you walk through these hallways,
were there like gurneys?
You find baby dolls and children's toys. Excuse me. It's hard.
Oh wow. Yeah, that must be an
you will
emotional
see
mindfuck.
You will see the toys that these kids played with. There's like a little Fisher-Price plane that has been there forever. These things were just kind of left there, along with all the memories and the stone tape theory.
Oh my God, that's terrible.
We won't even go into the bodies. There is a portion of land, apparently, that when they bought the asylum from the state, that the state would not relinquish as part of the asylum, and it's very close to this huge long chimney stack.
No fucking way.
And a greenhouse and some stuff that was there, but they we'll put it this way. From, I think they said, gosh, I don't want to mess up these numbers. I want to get this right, but from 19 The gravestones stop at a certain point.
Because they ran out of room and they just
and there's almost 50 years
burning the kids.
So you're telling me that these parents didn't want them. They dropped them off here. Oh my God! They didn't have the money for the pine box to send the body back, and there's no gravestones after a certain year. I think it was the 1950s or something like that.
They just cremated them all. Oh my God!
I mean, you tell me nobody died at the asylum for 50 years? Where are those people? Where are those bodies? So there's a lot of that too.
Shit.
And the whole underground tunnel network. Mara, just if I'm going to go just based off of stuff that she's, feeling, seeing, and also she's a historian of the place.
Right.
It's hard to believe that, that there aren't bodies buried down there somewhere or burned or worse. Yeah. God only knows. So,
I'm going to look and see when I do
place.
that case file, I'm going to see if there's any information like city records or, if anyone's gone in with like the, how they can do the, it's almost like sonar. It's like two.
Oh yeah,
it's like a sled.
They used it to look at Giant Stadium for Jimmy Hoffa's body, right? Yeah.
I wonder if anyone's gone and actually gone through and see like how far and how deep those tunnels actually go. Because I'm sure the city has either blocked it off or condemned the area, and you can't even get down there.
The ghost hunt part of it's interesting and it's fun and the storytelling and everything, but to me, I think the thing that sticks out the most, especially after the experience that I had, was that these were real people, man.
Right.
These were babies.
And that's
these
a
were
lot.
People's kids.
That's something that people tend to forget. They get lost in the fascination and the mystery of like the ghosts and spirits, but they tend to forget about at the heart of everything was a living person who
was called the Shame of Pennsylvania. Oh. And but it didn't close. It didn't actually officially close until 20 years after the Bill Baldini expose came out. So for another 20 years, this place operated. And what's interesting too, there's a lot of again, Ghost Adventures, Bagans and his crew did a great job because they actually found some former residents of the place that they got to talk about.
No shit, I'll have to check that out.
So it's pretty interesting stuff.
Earlier you said, and let me know if you're still okay to talk about this, because I know that talking about the kids kind of upset you a little bit. You had a near-death experience. You know
what? I'll tell you what happens, man. As far as with the kids thing, everything changes once you've had kids of your own.
I was about to say, you're a dad, so you're probably looking at it through a different view.
And I had just had Kira right before we had gone to Pennhurst. So she was born in February and we were there in June.
Oh, wow.
And so, I'm holding a baby that I'm responsible for, and this little infant. I don't care what was wrong with her. I could never leave that child on a doorstep and never look back and not know what happened to her, So it does. After you become a dad, it changes everything, man. And you get a little teary when you start talking about people hurting children, man. It's hard. It's hardcore. So, so I think I know where you're going to go. Yeah, you had the near-death experience. Are you okay to talk about it? Absolutely. How old were you when this happened? So, I was trying to work out the math. It was 11. Okay. I was 11 years old. And so I had a near-death experience when I was 11 years old. And basically... Was it a true near-death experience where you almost died, or did you die and get revived? Well, I'll walk you through it. Okay. I'll give you the facts as they were stated to me. Okay. So when I was 11, I was at a friend's house in Miami, Florida, in Keystone Point area there, and they had these canals that run through there. So in the canals, there's like sailboats and boats, parked and plugged in, and it's like behind the house you have your boat, because if you live on a canal, you're in Florida, everybody has a boat. So my buddy and I thought it'd be a great idea to just go, who needs a swimming pool when you have a perfectly good canal? So we decided to go, swimming in the canal, and we jumped in, and we're just, we're jumping off the sailboat mast into the water, just being crazy young kids, as every young kid should. And when it came time to get out of the water, we realized we forgot to put the ladder out on the dock or on the boat. So my buddy decided, hey, he's just going to go down there and swim to the neighbor's house and use their ladder. And I figured, man, I'm going to get out of here before he does. Right. So I decided to do a Superman leap and grabbed onto a pipe that was under the dock. And I was going to attempt to pull myself up. Yeah. So basically what I had done inadvertently was grabbed onto an electrical conduit that had a 240 volt and a 50 amp circuit to power this, sailboat, or to plug in like whatever yacht you would have behind the house. So at that point, I yanked down on this thing and I start to feel the current now. So I've broken the wires on the inside, and within seconds, I start to feel the current running through my body, and I'm attached. I cannot move. I can't let go. My, I guess my hands were just locked onto this conduit.
And you said, so are you stating that that pipe or wiring within that pipe, for a fact it's 250 volts, or are you just tossing that out there?
I'm pretty sure that it had to have enough current to basically to be able to plug in yachts and boats and that type of thing. So
because I just looked it up, that's like between 100 and 250 is like the human threshold of like what you can withstand.
Yeah, well, and then the extra amperage.
Right.
Because if you're running like the fridge on the yacht and all these different things, the idea is that you don't want to be running the generator. You want to plug it in so you can sleep on the boat or whatever. And if you're going to run stuff like microwaves and air conditioners and refrigerators, if they're not on LP gas or whatever, then it's basically you need a 50 amp circuit, or you're going to blow that. You're going to be resetting that breaker all day long. Look, I know a little bit about electricity, but yeah. So basically, I jumped up, I grabbed onto this thing. The wires broke in the inside, and all of the electricity was just traveling through me.
And you're in water still.
And so I'm halfway in water. So basically, probably like I leapt up, grabbed this thing, and so the bottom half of me was still in the water. Oh. And at that point, what happens too is physically I could not release.
Yeah, your muscles tighten, everything tightens up.
Everything was completely tense.
It's okay.
Including vocal cords, so I couldn't yell for help. I couldn't scream. I couldn't yell. Everything was like this, and I couldn't let go. So at this point, I'm like, I can't let go. I can't yell for help. There's nobody around. Anyway.
Could you think like how you're like were able to have a thought process?
This is the
while
check
this was
down.
actually happening to you.
This is the check down that's going on in my brain. Oh shit! Can't let go. Can't scream. And now everything's starting to get dark. And I'm like, so there is a moment there, and it wasn't this whole life flashes before your eyes moment, but it was a moment having to embrace that this is how the story ends for me. Like, this is the end. This is it. There's no getting out of this.
Enrages me.
In fact, I almost think in my head, I'm thinking to myself, there ain't no getting out of this one, Dave. Like, you've really done it this time. And having to embrace the fact that I was going to die.
Was there anger there? Because like for me, just hearing this, that pisses me off. Like if I go out like that, thinking about that makes me angry. Like I don't want to die I don't mean to say this in a way that's offensive to you. I don't want to die in a silly way. Like I want to die fucking in either in my sleep or like a fucking someone's trying to rob the store and I stop the guy but I get shot at the same time. Like I want to go out that way. I don't want to be in this is it. Like this is what ends me. Like something silly that it could have been a freak accident. Like I don't want a freak accident like that.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, look. At least I could check the box and say I've done that one.
But do you remember? Was there a feeling of anger or anything? I can't believe this is it. Like
I don't think I had time to feel angry. It happened so fast. But the things that were in my mind were: do everything you can to get yourself out of this. Yell for help. Not working. Let go. Can't. Look around. There ain't no way out. This is it. So there is a moment there where, especially when everything started to go black, that I had to embrace that I was dead, that I was dying, that this was it, that this is the end of the story. And that's the hardest part, is that moment right before, knowing there's no one coming to help you. You're fucked, literally. And
do you remember that feeling very well?
And you have to come to terms with it. You have to. And I think that's also plays into like ghosts and the paranormal, because people who have died sudden tragic deaths didn't get to that point where they were able to come to terms with it. And I did. I finally said, okay.
That's where my question was leading. Like, was there did you have a feeling of like, letting everything go and just embracing it, and like
I remember that more than I remember anything
the
else.
worries of life being like lifted off, because I've heard that before. Like I forget who it was. I want to say it might have been Kevin Smith was talking about his mother having a heart attack, and she, I guess almost, I want to say it was him. Someone had a heart attack. They almost died, and before they revived them, they had a feeling of like, you know, the stress of life, you know, that the things that you normally worry about and like things that freak you out and bother you, that was no longer there. They were able to be like, is that something that you felt like almost like a, I'm embracing it. I'm okay. I'm just like, this is what it is.
Yeah. I was going to say like that. I think that last moment, once I realized there was no getting out of this one, I had to come to terms with death at that point, that this was it. And as everything went dark, you know, I don't know that there was this massive feeling of relief, but there was certainly a sense of knowing there was nothing more that I could possibly do to affect the outcome.
Wow.
So I had to embrace it. And as an 11-year-old kid, you know, you barely have a concept of death.
Yeah.
At that point, like anything close to death I experienced was seeing Rambo, you know, in the theater or you know, movies and TV. So the most interesting thing, it wasn't a whole life flashing before my eyes, but for me, it was at a young age having to come to terms with the show's over. You know, roll the credits.
Shit.
And the fact that I'm sitting here talking to you right now and even discussing this is just bizarre. And I haven't really, you know, I don't go around. This isn't, you know, something that everybody knows or I tell everybody. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people do know.
Well, thank you for sharing it with us, obviously.
So, sorry. I feel like I stepped on you there.
No. I appreciate everything you're doing right now.
Yeah. So the other interesting thing behind this was the fact that, okay, so the next thing that I actually physically remember was everything being black. Everything was dark, but I'm starting to hear voices. And I feel like they're calling my name. And I didn't really, you know, I'd never been unconscious before that. So I didn't know the feeling of coming to or coming, you know, being unconscious and, you know, regaining consciousness. So I couldn't see, but I could hear. And so my sense of hearing was coming back, and they were people were on the dock there, and I remember coughing up a lot of water, and I'm like trying to open my eyes. I'm like, I can't see, and I'm freaking out. But in my head, this is so stupid, but in my head, I knew as consciousness was coming back that I'm like, oh no, like it's starting to come back to me what had happened. And the first thing I started doing was testing myself on like geography questions from because, you know, I'm 11, I'm in school. And I knew my geography and my state capitals and, you know, mathematics and stuff. And so I'm like quizzing myself to make sure my brain still worked, if that's not a totally funny, geeky thing to do. And then I remember also just calling and saying, Jesus, help me, Jesus, save me. And, you know, I came from a pretty, you know, I wouldn't say religious family, but my mom and dad are, you know, we went to church. Mom's very spiritual and, you know, and that kind of thing. And I think I was still sort of working out my own opinions on that stuff, but I was brought up in it. So, so I was revived on the dock, ended up in an ambulance, shot up with a bunch of steroids, 100% oxygen, rushed to the hospital. Lungs were about 3/4 filled with water. So there was a big concern of collapsed lungs and all this kind of stuff. But really the bizarre thing is I think I only spent about 2 or 3 days in the hospital and 100% prognosis, no burns, which is very bizarre. And maybe someone out there that, you know, understands how electrocution and drowning work, but I mean, the fact that there were no burns from the electricity was interesting. Also, nobody knew at that point that anything had happened with electricity. They found me on the bottom of the canal. Right. So here's the layout of the event. So my buddy goes and he gets out, he goes in the house and he goes, "Where's Dave?" And they're like, "What do you mean, where's Dave? He didn't come in here? Oh, he must still be in the canal." And they're like, "In the canal?" So everybody comes running out of the house all the way down the backyard and starts looking in the canal, and they see me at the bottom. And a gentleman that we knew, he was actually an airline pilot for United or something, jumped in there, dove in, and, you know, they hoisted me out. So I don't know how much time took place. And I I know that it was pretty quick from the moment that the initial electrocution started happening, that I couldn't let go and everything went black. I mean, that happened pretty fast, probably within 10 or 15, 20 seconds.
Wow.
But how long was I under the water when
Right.
they found me? I don't know. So I don't know how long I was even without oxygen, to be honest with you. And just being able to,
So they took you out. They did CPR. Or did they do CPR, or
Yeah,
did
so-
ambulance get there in time and they performed CPR?
they did CPR on the dock, and
Okay.
I came to there, and then I just remember going, on the gurney and ending up in the ambulance, and then I was in and out a little bit there, and then they were sticking me with something, and I said, "Oh, what's that?" And they're like, "Oh, it's a steroid. It'll be fine. You're gonna be fine." Okay. I think my parents at that point had gotten over there, and then they were following behind in the ambulance. But I was out of there in about 3 or 4 days. My dad knew a very good friend of ours, a friend of the family to this day, was a ear, nose, and throat specialist, and just a doctor as well, and everything. And he was really well respected in that hospital, and he was very much a part of my recovery. But yeah, I was out of there in about, I think, 3 or 4 days.
Wow.
And but interesting.
And your dad's familiar with like water stuff because he's what, one of the original people to water ski without a ski. He's like a foot skier, right?
That's right. So yeah, my dad in the so he was in World War II, and they used to nail shoes to boards and ski behind the patrol boats off the coast of Okinawa in
That's
Japan.
so cool.
And so when he came back, he knew a guy by the name of Dick Pope, who ran Cypress Gardens in Florida.
Okay.
And so my dad started running the ski shows and stuff there. And at that time, he was barefoot water skiing. He never really thought anything of it. He thought it was just a nifty, trick, and he did it. What he didn't know was I think he's the first American to ever barefoot water ski. Someone did do it before him and document it, but they were trying to do it.
Gotcha.
And I think it was an Australian guy, last name Hooker or something like this. I'd have to fact check that, but so there was somebody that did this a couple weeks before my dad actually did it. But
Wow.
yeah, we've got some. Yeah, so he's a barefoot water skier and a boat racer. And
So you come from a family that's familiar with water.
yeah,
You grew up in South Florida where water's all around us. There's no rhyme or reason other than you did get electrocuted. You're used to being in the water. You didn't just drown. You weren't a strong swimmer. This definitely happened. Let me ask you this: do you think you died?
all right, I'm going to tell you something that I definitely don't tell everybody. Okay. I don't know what stage of that. I don't have proof that my heart stopped or anything along those lines have happened. After this event, and after I was released from the hospital, I started having a lot of lucid dreams.
Uh-huh.
And these weren't necessarily the out-of-body style, but these were the ones where you're kind of coherent, or the word lucid, or cognizant of what's going on around you, right? And several of these dreams, I recall floating and being told, "It's okay, go back."
No shit.
But the dreams were almost like memories. So it would have flashbacks of this whole experience and the drowning and the being revived. And I can't definitively say that it happened or that occurred
Right.
in between that period, or when that happened, or even if it happened. Maybe it was a child's brain trying to process these huge events that have just occurred. I have no idea.
Right.
But I definitively recall several dreams where hearing a voice. And it was a similar situation where I felt like I couldn't see in my dream. Everything was murky and dark and black and almost like underwater caustics.
Right.
Which
is if you've ever opened your eyes
underwater,
in canal water,
that's what it would look like.
Yeah.
I never would have put two and two together about that, but that's what I saw and that's what I heard.
Tell me about the voice. Tell me about the voice. Was it a soothing voice? Was it a familiar voice?
Almost identical to hearing you right now in these. It's okay. Go back. No, I have no idea. I mean, I don't even know if it was a feeling interpreted as a voice. You know what I mean? It was a very kind of ethereal, weird. I can't even find words to kind of explain it. But I remember it definitely felt like I was underwater looking up, And also something that happens too, like when you're coming to, you're in martial arts. You've probably been knocked out a few times.
I've been knocked out. Yeah, it's jolting. It's not.
Almost how your vision starts to open up from the center out. Like you get your straight ahead vision first, and then the peripheral starts to come in. But it was almost like, I think that's why people describe like a tunnel.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But it definitely looked like I could kind of see a little bit straight ahead, and it looked murky, and it looked like I was underwater. And then I just remember either having that peace and that feeling, and almost audibly hearing something say, "It's okay, go back," and just suddenly feeling okay about being back here, as if I wasn't sure.
Wow.
Because the other part of that is when I resigned in that moment that I knew death was imminent and there was no getting out of it. I told you, I said I had to be okay with it. Like I had to come to that place.
Right.
11-year-old brain being coming to terms with this is it.
Yeah.
Then I resigned myself to it. I did not expect to ever open my eyes again. I expected there to be nothing after that. So the fact that the story has a sequel is
Jesus Christ. Is there anyone? I'm sure all your family. Have you shared that portion of the story with them, and what are their thoughts on this?
Most of the close family knows, and a lot of my family are also, have spiritual ties. So, as far as this event is concerned, for most of them, it's a miracle by God that I am here.
Right.
So I'm just happy to be here and have a second chance to do all this stuff and to figure out what this journey is all about.
Yeah, I'm happy you're here. I'm happy you're here with us, and I'm happy you're here with me right now. This is phenomenal. Thank you so much for sharing that with me.
It's fantastic. Yeah, man. I mean, it's the beauty of life is learning to. God, did you ever hear the show The United States of Terra?
Yes.
Okay.
I've never seen it, but I know what it is.
They have one of the most beautiful opening sequences of any show I've ever seen. It's all this like pop-up art kind of thing, and it's just amazingly done. But the lyric in that opening song says, "I know I'll be fine when I learn to love the ride."
Ooh.
And I just got chills on that one too. But that's been kind of the philosophy, I think, for me, is when you have something that abrupt and tragic and out of the blue happen to you, you tend to get a little bit of the PTSD and just, it's a very mentally stressful thing. And I think it took me a long time to feel comfortable and safe in my own shoes again. And I found safety almost now. I've had to come to terms with the fact that I find safety in not knowing. There's almost a beauty in knowing that fate is going to be whatever it is, and I can only control what I can control.
Are you afraid of dying now?
I'll borrow a line from Woody Allen on this one. I'm not afraid of death. It's the dying part that concerns me. But you know what? Another Woody Allen, death can't be all that bad. I've never heard anybody come back to complain about it. So, but that's not true because we went to Pennhurst. But no, you know what? Not afraid of dying. Not afraid of death. I'm really focused on what I can control. Mm-hmm. If I'm sitting here stressed out about what may or may not happen 6 to 8 months from now, between COVID and the school and raising a kid and all the things, that I could sit here and stress out over and worry about. If I'm focused on that, I'm not living in the moment.
Right.
And I'm not utilizing my life to its fullest potential. You can only control. You only have control over what you can control.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
I'll borrow a line, but you control how you play the game. That's the only thing you have control over. And I think it's kind of pushed me into this almost. I've been doing a lot of researching and a lot of reading on Stoicism lately, and the ancient, the Stoics,
right,
the deep thinkers of that time, because they were very passionate about, living life to its fullest. We're going to die one way or the other. If I'm worried about 6 months from now what's going to happen, I'm not looking out for the bus that might run me over when I walk out of your house today. I mean, so that's the thing. It's all we have is this moment.
Yeah, the secret to life is living it.
Carpe diem.
Seriously.
Seize the day.
Carpe
You know,
diem.
you don't have any control if the COVID's going to get you, or the bus, or, you know, God forbid, you know, the electricity and drowning. But it didn't. So I'm here, you know, die another day, as they say.
That's awesome. Let's end it on that. Let's die another day. And
Amen.
and you're a James Bond fan.
Amen. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
James Bond.
Oh, very excited.
Die another day.
Very excited about the one.
Thank you
that's
for coming in.
out.
Thank you for
Absolutely.
sharing everything with us. I know that's been, I'm sure, an emotional journey for you the last hour or so, and for dealing with some of the technical issues we ran into. Unsurprisingly, I'm so happy that it happened with you here and not somebody else.
This is like a therapy session. I feel like I should be paying you. No, man, thank you so much, and thank you for you know, going with your gut and finding sharp focus, because you've been absolutely so influential and just it's. I don't have words for it, man. I'm so blessed to know you.
Thank you. I feel
And
the same
so
way.
happy that we're friends. So
Me too.
thanks for
Me too.
having me.
Thank you very much. All right, that's it, boys and girls. Carpe diem. We are out.